Hey,
The measure of success it was something I needed, right? So even if no one else showed up or no one else got anything from it, I got something from it in the process of offering it.
hey, welcome to Game Layer, where we explore the science of play and the quest of learning. I am your host, David Colmer. Theme music by Caleb Willits. Welcome down to Game Layer.
I play piano.
I play chess.
I play everything.
I play games of my own invention.
I'd like to move to the domain of play.
How is building and maintaining a business similar to playing and winning a game? Season 2 delves into casting the business owner card, exploring the entrepreneurial play. My guest today is named Sarah Garner, and I got to know Sarah through the local chapter of ATD in St. Louis, Missouri. She has a certain energy to her that reminds me of friends that I had in college. There's just a very outdoorsy vibe, very crunchy, very organic, but also just loving the outdoors, being creative. And the whole energy that she puts off is always positive. You can tell she's really busy. She has her hands in a lot of pots, and I admire that about her. So really excited to have her on the show. I know this is going to be a good one. So please join me in welcoming Sarah Garner down to the Game Layer. Thank you for listening to Game Layer. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and especially review wherever you found us. This keeps us in the charts and helps other learners find us as well. If you got something out of an episode, please be sure to share it with someone who you think will like it.
Yes.
So my favorite part about Radiolab is they just kind of like hit record, and then it's like the people in the room don't really know that they're recording yet. And it's just kind of like they're like, okay, well, we hit record, and they never take that part out. That's my favorite part of Radiolab.
Yeah.
And I feel like when I start these, people ask me questions, and then I start asking them questions, and it's like kind of miss the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
So you just asked me why I started into podcasting, and my ultimate response was I waited too long to start.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that fall back on you with the whole solopreneurship or starting a business?
Yeah, I think for me personally, there are a lot of things in my life that I would say I waited too long to start doing. And starting my own business was one of them. It was something, not that I was laying in bed dreaming about starting a business, but there were passions that I had that I think I waited too long to pursue. And so one of the things that I really like to talk about when I talk to folks about my journey is I was in my 40s when I started my own business. And, even when it comes to, getting outside and some of the things that I do in my business, I'm constantly talking about how it's never too late to start and starting from where you are. And I don't know if you would say this about podcasting, but I tell folks all the time, I'm a recovering current perfectionist. And I think part of why we wait too long to start is we think we have to get it right or do it perfectly. And that's simply not true, right? Like we just have to start. How many people are sitting around with half-baked ideas, whatever it is? It doesn't have to be about business. Yeah, right? I've got a whole
Hands
journal
up.
full of them.
Me too. I got piles of paper here, just full of ideas.
Yeah. And I think so often we get in our own way. It's lots of things, right? It's perfectionism. Sometimes it's resources for business, for podcasting. Like it doesn't actually take a lot of resources to start something. When I talk to people about getting outside more, one of the two top objections is I don't have the right gear or I can't afford the right gear. You just need shoes on your feet to walk out your door, really, right?
Right.
So all that is to say, I waited too long to start my own business.
And I love that. I think it's a great introduction because it probably can be the core of our discussion. I think we're definitely aligned in a lot of ways. I've only hung out with you a couple of times, but I feel like every time we do hang out, it's just like clicks. It's like, oh yeah, you're just like my friend from college, or it's like things that I learn about you don't surprise me. Yeah, right. I think so. I want to like dial it back just a little bit simply because we haven't hung out and just ask, I'm confused where you're from. Sometimes you're like, yeah, well, I'm not really from St. Louis. I spend a lot of time in Alaska and I'm driving across Canada. So where are you from? So what's a little bit of your background?
You know what, Dave, I'm still trying to figure out the right answer. But you know what? In this moment, I'm declaring it here.
You have time.
This is a your podcast exclusive.
Oh,
I
wow.
am officially okay with people being confused about where I'm from.
That works.
I'm from where I am, right? I am where my
Yeah.
feet are.
Yeah.
But truly, I have
No, and
been.
it does kind of color you in a way too, right? There's a
Yeah.
lens. And in St. Louis, they ask,
Yeah,
which high school did you go to? That's like a St. Louis
exactly.
thing. And I think the outcome of that is what's your social economic status, right? Which borough are you
Mm,
from? How much taxes do you pay? What are your resources in that area? So
yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
loaded question, no
It's a
doubt.
loaded question, but it also comes from like human survival. Our brains are programmed to categorize people, and that is how we
Sure.
make sense of them, and that's how we determine are they friend or foe. It's built in. It's like baked into our system. So
Hmm.
no one needs to apologize for it. And you're right, it's often a loaded question with lots and
Sure.
lots of layers, right? You
Yeah.
gave the St. Louis example. I
Yeah.
think for people of different cultural backgrounds, that question can feel really loaded. It can be complicated, right? What is
Yeah.
home? There's lots of layers, but I feel really comfortable answering. I've been splitting my time between St. Louis and Alaska, which is my home base, and the drive up through Canada is a permanent move back to be in Alaska full time. Yeah, I think that probably is a little bit of a taste of who I am, like just sort of thinking about me and the business. But I truly am a bit nomadic. And I think our current, I don't know, environment where we can do work from lots of places has
Yeah.
enabled that. So I guess I'm one of those people who's taken full advantage of being able to be from multiple places to keep people guessing. But I'll tell you a really cute story. My sweet mother,
Uh-huh.
who loves me dearly, cares a lot about me and my safety. She has a right to know where I am in like the
Yeah.
present moment, even though that shifts from week to week. She still keeps a paper calendar and
Oh,
she keeps track of like two things: my dad's doctor's appointments and where Sarah is in the week. So, like next week, I'll be at the ATD conference in LA.
nice.
She's got that penciled into her calendar. And I think it
Awesome.
just helps her to know.
Yeah.
Where we are maybe in relation to each other in the world.
Yeah.
So it's a fair
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. And I love how you're pushing back on answering it because it does.
Mm,
And that answer in itself puts you in a category, right? And you called it
thanks. Yeah.
the nomadic
Yeah.
category.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
I'm back home. Like I moved right back home where I'm from after traveling the world. So I can kind of relate. And also I'm getting a little bit too comfortable. And I think that's why I want to
Mm.
start talking to solopreneurs and people like yourself who are out traveling.
It's really
Yeah.
interesting. I was in an Uber yesterday and the
Okay.
driver said, I've probably lost stars for being too chatty, but I don't care. I love getting to know people, even on a 10-minute Uber ride. And I just asked the driver, like, are you from the St. Louis area? Are you from here? And he said, yeah, born and raised, still here. And then he said something really interesting. He said, I missed my window to leave.
Oh,
And I said, friend, you don't know who's gotten into your car. And I just said, never say never. And that goes back to where we started, right?
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's never too late for anything
Hmm.
that we want to try or try to do. So,
Okay.
yeah, it was an
So
interesting response.
what does your business do? That kind of leads me
Yeah.
into founder, lead trainer, and learning strategy consultant for Garner Training and Consulting LLC.
There's kind of two parts. And the way I'll break it down, Dave, is that there's sort of this consulting piece,
Uh-huh.
right? And then, there's evergreen explorations, just to kind of share a little bit of like the two different business models.
Yes.
I really
Perfect.
think about the consulting piece as being the B, right? So consulting
Mm.
organizations or even coming into organizations and facilitating trainings, workshops, development for their teams. And evergreen explorations is really right now set up more as B2C. So working directly with clients, with just people who want to reconnect with nature, want to get outside, want to learn more about themselves in the process. Whereas the consulting piece is more working with organizations who see a benefit to those things for their employees and want to work with me to make that happen. In a nutshell, is that helpful?
Yeah, it sounds like they're symbiotic.
They are. They
Like you do an
absolutely are.
evergreen exploration, you have a group, and then maybe that develops into consulting situation.
Exactly. Or vice versa. And there's
Okay.
definitely
Okay.
also crossover, right? It's like everything in
Yeah.
nature, right? It's all interconnected and interwoven, but that is
Yeah.
how I've kind of conceptualized these two pieces. And they're
Mm.
for any current or aspiring solopreneurs out there, they're vastly different models, right? And I would say, and you can tell me you've been to one of my workshops
I
now.
have last week.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that for me, at least, it's all L&D, right? It's just a
Right.
specific way and topic that I'm facilitating it, right? So I am all about experiential learning, right? We're getting
Right.
outside. We're not just talking about it.
We're doing things.
We're
Right.
doing stuff, right?
Right.
But there is an educational purpose to it. And I have found so far, you're welcome to push back on this, but
Okay.
I think many organizations are a little bit afraid of that.
Yeah.
Right? They
Yeah.
still, I think, are looking for someone to, come into a classroom, virtually or otherwise, and talk about things where
Mm.
I'm like, let's put our feet in the grass and our hands in the dirt, right? And
Yes.
right now, it's more like individuals that are interested in that. Although I'm hoping to see more of that crossover in the future.
No, and I love it. And I can just reflect on that and push
Yeah.
back because I agree with you. And when I got my master's degree, it took a long time, right? It took me like 8 years because it was bits and pieces here and there. This company pays for it. That company paid for it. And by the end of it, I was like ready to be done with it. And I kept gravitating towards this idea of like the tactile learning. And I even found this guy who does basically what you do in his
Yeah.
own way. So I started following him, but he kind of fell off the map. He probably like just ended up in Canada somewhere and you can't find him now, right? Like kind of like you're about to
I'll look
do.
for him on my drive
He's probably up there in
What's
a
his
school
name?
bus. You're right.
In
I
a school
forgot.
bus. I love that. I can already say he's my people.
But I there's something to me about being outside. And I
Yeah.
think that we as professionals do end up in these offices with recycled air, fluorescent light bulbs, and it starts
Yeah.
to suck out our soul. And I
Mhm.
don't know that organizations realize how much money is wasted for that lack of wellness
Yeah.
and that toxic environment that's a result of that.
Yeah.
So I don't know how else to add. I would always bring
Yeah.
light bulbs into my training rooms. I'd always bring like a blue light and then like an incandescent, like warm light, just to have like more than just fluorescent light,
I love that. And I'm
right?
not afraid to say this is what I've been doing, and I'm not afraid to
It
say this.
helped.
Yeah.
Yeah, it helped.
Yes.
People liked it. They
Yes.
appreciated that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very hard for me to talk about really the focus of my businesses, like kind of both
Okay.
pieces of it
Okay.
is outdoor education and outdoor wellness. That's really my focus.
Sure.
Wellness generally, but for me, that is being outdoors and is nature. So it's hard for me to talk about those things in a classroom or even
Yeah.
virtually, although I'm very willing to do it. So, I've used similar techniques. So, one that I've done that I think folks sometimes they're just not used to, but I've found to be successful is I'll take some essential oils with me and I'll just pass one around the room, put a little in your hands, rub it together, smell it. All right. We're not outside, but
Mm,
now, right, like I've created a sensory experience that is similar.
correct.
It's kind of like
Sure.
your version of bringing lights into a
Yeah.
classroom,
No,
right?
I would
Like,
definitely bring some pine. That smell of pine
yeah,
always does it for me.
yeah,
I don't know why. But yeah,
yeah.
pine forest.
You and
Yeah,
yeah, our friend Josh. I think his is oak though. Is that what he said? I'm trying to remember.
that's
But
funny.
yeah, I mean, that's one of our senses, right? But for me,
Yeah.
that's like one of the ways to bring nature in, or like, with evergreen explorations, I facilitate a lot of virtual workshops. I've got community around the country and world. And so lots of what I do is online. And, I'll invite folks, have a cup of tea, light a candle next to you, right? Have some essential oils going. And
Yeah.
these aren't because they're fluffy self-care things. They're because they create a sensory experience for us
Yeah.
that does connect us to nature, right? Tea is a natural substance. Essential oil those all come from the environment. So it's not the same, but it is a way to help folks get into a headspace, right? That is outside.
Yeah, and I think you're kind of leaning into this idea that it feels woo-woo or it feels kind of
Right.
hippie. But the blue light thing I mentioned, that research was done by some people called NASA. Very
Mhm.
science-minded people who did research that said when people get blue lights into their eyes, that tells them it's daytime and their brain knows to stay awake.
Yeah.
If you're in space, it's really hard to keep your sleep cycle set, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just want to go out of the way to point out that this stuff can feel a little bit woo-woo, but I
Yeah.
don't think it is. I think there's
Yeah.
something about connecting back to nature that is very wholesome and it
Mhm.
completes people.
Yeah,
So,
I lean into that too. And
mm,
I will say, I think that the wellness industry in general has not done itself any favors by focusing on the things that lead people to think it's woo-woo, right?
sure.
And I'm not saying we need to sit in a circle for 60 minutes talking about the science.
That's not what you did.
But I like
Yeah.
talking, I like
Yeah.
integrating little pieces of that. So like earlier when we
Yeah.
were talking
Yeah.
about, a lot of organizations, they're not trying they're not trying to bring 150 employees into the woods for a number of reasons. Sometimes it's legal, right? Risk management has said no. Sometimes it's financial, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
it's because it feels woo-woo. But the reason why fluorescent lights don't work, the reason why like hard floors don't work is because that is actually counterintuitive and counternatural scientifically, right?
Uh-huh.
And I say this all the time. If you think about where humans came from, nature, the outdoors was our classroom, was where we lived, was where we worked, right? So the physical, like how we physically work today, for the most
Hmm.
part, scientifically, right? It's counterintuitive. And that is why
Right.
folks struggle with it
Yeah.
physically, emotionally, mentally, right? So there is science behind that. It's not just because I want to get a group of 150 people outside hugging trees, right? Like that's kind of, the stereotype of like, let's do a corporate
It is.
retreat.
It is.
But that's, there's science behind why people don't always learn well in those kinds of environments. They're counterintuitive, they're counternatural, actually. It's not where we
Yeah.
came from. It's not where we OG started learning, actually. We started learning outside.
We did. And it's fun to me that I got to experience one of your sessions firsthand
Mm,
just last week. That's serendipitous, right? And I want to
yeah.
talk about the warm up that you did, the head, shoulders, knees, and toes. And, that could have gotten weird. That could have gotten like, and now we're going to hold hands and say a prayer or do kumbaya, but it didn't go there. It was,
Yeah.
and to me,
Thank you.
yeah, you know what I mean? It could have gotten really, really weird, and it didn't. But for me, it really aligned with concepts of sort of like secular Buddhism or like the
Mm,
concepts of just like any sort of non-denominational meditation where we're going to do a body check-in and just see where we're at. And for me, it resonated with the idea of just like listening to your body or
yeah.
becoming fully present, which
Yeah.
shouldn't be woo-woo, right? That sort of thing is something that I think modern humans are not good at. And that's what I got out of it. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that
Thank
testimony
you.
helps you at all. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I was about to say, if you didn't share, I was like, tell the people what you thought about it. I'm very
Well,
curious.
here's the problem. I was ready for a hike, right? And I pulled a muscle in my butt the week before, and then my sciatic nerve was going nuts. So, but it was cool
Yeah.
that we had the art station at home base. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
can you talk about how art works into all this? Because I think that's another attribute that you add to the another
Def-
layer, if you will.
Definitely. I'll chat about head and shoulders, knees and toes, and then
Sure.
the trailhead activities that we
Just
did.
throwing
Yeah.
stuff at you. Yeah.
I
Pick
love
and
it.
choose.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So what's really interesting to me, well, two things.
Okay.
I want to not lose track of this.
Sure.
It is
I'll take
the
notes.
highest compliment. And if you don't mind, I'm going to quote you on this in a client testimonial for my website.
I'll give you some video of it. Yeah.
Sarah Garner, it could have gotten weird, but it didn't. That's the highest compliment because that means that I pushed us right to the edge, but didn't walk over the line. So thank you. I want to say
You're
thank you for
welcome.
that.
Yeah.
Here's where I'm going to challenge our thinking about it could have gotten weird, but it didn't. Head,
Okay.
shoulders, knees, and toes is a childhood activity. And what child have you ever seen or heard say it was weird, right?
Right.
No, they're into it. They
They
totally
love
get it,
it.
right?
Yes.
And it comes from that sort of like childlike sense of play.
I mean, it gets faster. Who wouldn't love something that gets faster? I mean, that's
Right,
amazing. Yeah. I can't do it. It's too
right. But
fast. Yeah.
kids, until they reach
They
a
love it.
certain age, generally, they're
Yeah.
not like self-conscious about touching their hands to their head, shoulders, knees, and toes. They're just doing it
Yeah.
for so many reasons. And so I think it's interesting because I feel like generally speaking, as we age as adults, right, we become more tuned into like social cues and self-conscious of those kinds of things. And
Yeah.
for me in a classroom setting, something so like to me kind of benign as head, shoulders, knees, and toes, something I think many of us grew up playing is actually a really good temperature check of how far I can take a group, right?
Yeah.
Because there are groups that I take out and we'll jump straight into like a body scan meditation. But for
Yes.
a lot of groups, they're not
Yeah.
familiar with that or that goes too far.
Sure.
So, what I like about head, shoulders, knees, and toes is it's a good sort of like environmental check. Like, who am I working with here if I don't know the group?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I said this during our activity. It's also really good for all ages. And especially because we had some kids in the group,
Yeah,
right?
my 7-year-old was there and she ate it up.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think too it's good almost like not quite a mnemonic, but it's, for learning retention, if I were to maybe go out back and ask the group, why is being outside in nature good for us as people
Mm,
and as employees, right?
mm.
Okay, what did Sarah teach me? Head. What is it about my head? Okay, right? And so you kind of have a way of remembering. So there's lots of different reasons I use that activity, but thank you for
Okay.
saying it could have been weird, but it didn't go.
Well, and I think another reason it didn't get weird is you didn't say, and now we're going to play head, shoulders, knees, and toes.
Yeah.
You just started the sort of the body scan activity very neutral.
Yeah.
And then I didn't realize till the end that, wait, we just played head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Like, I didn't even know we did that until we got to toes. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, that
Yeah.
game, you know?
And if
Yeah.
you notice, before I said, I kind of offered an invitation, like, if you want to touch your head, go ahead. Some people had already started it because I was doing it, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and by the end, people were
That
doing
was
things
probably
I
me.
wasn't even doing. I was like, this is great. You all could be the facilitators here.
Yeah.
So thank you. I love that activity, and I've been
Mhm.
actually thinking about ways to expand on it. But I want to give credit to one of the group leaders for the outdoor activity that you were at, who kind of asked the question, like, how can we make this accessible for everybody? And I
Okay.
don't think that you had busted your butt at the time, but we were sort of thinking about who might be in the group and
Yeah.
just wanting to make sure that every person who came had something they could connect with related to the
Uh-huh.
topic of networking in nature. And so that's how those activities came to be. And I personally just love art. I think kids can connect with it. I think, adults can connect with it.
Mhm.
So that kind of became what folks could do if they, weren't as comfortable or able to venture down the trail. So I'm glad that worked for
Right.
you.
It did. And I can tie it back. I went to ATD ICE actually last year in
Mm-hmm.
Narlands, Arnola. I don't know how you say it. And they had this painting station where there were just canvases that had like outlines of like a beaver swimming in the river or a dolphin out in the ocean. And people can just stop and do part of that painting. And I sat there for like hours and just talked to these people from Saudi Arabia. And that was probably my favorite part of the conference. Can you imagine that? Like, out of all the things I did, that's
Yeah.
the one part that I have the most memory of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think from an L&D perspective, it also touches on different ways of learning too,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
We were talking a little bit earlier, you mentioned like I'm kind of a tactile learner and I am too, but I think everyone learns, or engages with learning differently.
Correct.
And so, the kind of choose your own adventure experience that you were on, I think also gave
Mm.
folks different ways to do that, right?
Yeah.
Whether it
Yeah.
was kind of the length of the hike or I'm going to pick these activities. So, what was it, coloring or the sort of like, sketching or coloring of like natural items too.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, I think I like when I can to create kind of different containers for folks. And it's always
Yes.
interesting to see what people gravitate toward too.
I like that. And I
Yeah.
agree with you 100%. I will push back on the phrasing of tactile learning because I
Mm,
know that there's a concept that we are either a tactile or a visual or audio learning. And
yeah.
as an instructional designer who has a master's degree, I really want to push back on that because there's no science behind. All of
Interesting.
us are all three. Like
Yeah.
we're all
Yeah.
because if you have audio, visual, and tactile, then you're going to remember it,
Yeah.
period. And if
Yeah.
we think that we're audio, there's a 5% chance that we're not as good at audio.
Yeah. Interesting.
That it's not even significant statistically because 5%
Yeah.
is not significant. So
Yeah.
that whole thing is, to me, it's a trigger. So I just had to,
Mm.
you hit a trigger for me.
No, it's good. I'm happy I hit a trigger. No,
Yeah.
that you taught me a little something, and I tend to agree. I think also I
Okay.
would add, like, I think people also learn differently in different environments and at different
Yes.
stages of their lives. So
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, thinking back to when I was in like traditional classrooms, as a high
Yeah.
school and college student, that looked totally different than how I would say I learned today too.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think what you're getting at is we're multidimensional learners, and I agree with
Yeah.
that wholeheartedly.
Yeah. I spend a lot of time working in Montessori, if you've heard of
Mm,
Montessori at all.
yeah, yeah.
And there's a concept she has of like these valleys and peaks.
Okay.
Learning is not like this. You climb this mountain. That's not how it works, right? Like you said, we're
Mm,
multidimensional.
mm-hmm.
And right now, I'm like taking off and I'm learning all this stuff, and then I kind of fall back down. Probably because something weird happened in my life, or I had a death in the
Mm,
family. Who knows, right?
mm-hmm.
You have to understand that this is a human being, and
Yeah,
everyone's not on the same path, right?
yeah, exactly.
So we've talked about your business model. We talked about how you
Mm,
meet people from different angles. What are the things
yeah.
that you love to do in your personal life that you
Mm.
feel you've correctly applied to your business model that make it more successful? Why do you feel passionate about it? Because I know you do.
I do think that it connects. So come on this journey with me, Dave. This is
I'm here.
about solopreneurship. And I've come to
Okay.
this realization recently through a good friend, Keegan, who I want to shout out, who is also a solopreneur. And we were recently chatting about something that she was offering in her kind of wellness business. And what she said was sort of the measure of success was it was something I needed, right? So even if no one else showed up or no one else got anything from it, I got something from it in the process of offering it. The measure of success was it was something I needed, right? So even if no one else showed up or no one else got anything from it, I got something from it in the process of offering it because it was something that I needed. I connected with that so deeply. So the realization I think I've come to recently for anyone who is a solopreneur or thinking about kind of venturing out on their own simultaneous as working full time for someone else, or maybe they're leaving a job and starting fresh, is that I really think solopreneurship is like the ultimate selfish, self-interested thing
Hmm.
in a good way because
Yeah.
it starts from a need that we ourselves have. And I really feel that way about my business. Keegan clearly felt that way about something she was offering, and that need could be something as simple as I need more cash, right? I need another way to sustain myself. And so I want to start this business on top of maybe something I'm already doing or to expand, right? So that can be the need. For me, my need was I was so completely disconnected from the things that I love and I'm passionate about. I was so burned out in my 9 to 5 job at the time, so disconnected from the things that I love, nature, being outside being a big piece of that. That was the need, right? So the need wasn't necessarily, I need to start a business.
Right.
It was I need to get outside. And
Mm.
it was also actually, I need people to do it with. At the time, I had a partner who was traveling a lot. So I kind of lost my nature buddy. And then my hiking boots were like by the door collecting dust, not the good kind. And I just
Yeah.
stopped, right? I hadn't
Yeah.
actually ever really gotten comfortable going outside solo, which I do a lot of now.
Mm.
But at the time, like I didn't have community to do it with, right? So I,
Mm.
I needed to be outside. I needed community. And for me at the time, at least, community was social, but it was also safety, right? I felt safer being outside with other people. And so I really started the business for me, right? Which I mean, I'm using terms like selfish and self-interested, but not in a bad way or in the negative context those things can
Sure.
be. And so when I think about your question, like, what have you done that feels integral to the brand? I have centered myself in it, right? It really started from my passions, my needs, and it's all obviously become about other people, bringing other people along on that journey. But I think it really has to start from something that you are innately passionate about, because I don't know any solopreneur, at least when they start out, who could say, I kind of feel so about it. I'm right. Like people can feel that way
Yeah.
about their jobs working for other people and still get stuff
Yeah.
done. You can't start and sustain a business if you don't feel
Yeah.
deeply passionate about it. If
Right.
it's not something that like is you and is in your bones. So I'm
Mhm.
going to pause there. Does any of that like resonate for you, or is there anything you want to push back on? I feel like that's been a theme of this exchange, which is good. It's
I like
challenging my
us
thinking.
holding each other as accountable. There's like a Socratic
Yeah.
element to all of this, and that's my favorite
Yeah.
vein. I think what came up for me was this concept of self-care. So
Mm.
instead of saying this is selfish, saying I need to take care
Yeah.
of myself first, my partner always says, if you can't love yourself, how are you going to love anyone else? Right? You got
Yeah.
to feed yourself first, that, you know,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So that's where I went
Yeah.
with that.
Let's,
Yeah.
I wonder if we could meet in the middle at self-serving.
There you go.
How do you feel about that?
I like that.
Does that
That's a
feel a
good
little less
compromise.
sticky? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like I
Yeah.
mean, self-care is a
Right.
way of serving myself, right? I'm taking care
Yeah.
of myself as a necessary part of whatever it is that I'm doing.
It
Yeah.
doesn't feel super different to me. So yeah, that they're both good, I think. And
Okay.
even selfish. I think back to the concept of being mindful, you know, things are never good nor bad. It's all about how we label them, right?
Yeah.
I did a Buddhist retreat once in the mountains for 7 days, and I sat by myself for 8 days straight. And I came to the teacher at one point and I said, you know, I feel really lonely. And he's like, so?
Yeah.
Why are you putting a negative label on loneliness, right? And that was the biggest
Oh.
learning from that moment, or that quest. And that to me is, I see that all the time, where people are having these knee-jerk reactions to an event, not being able to feel comfortable with being uncomfortable, and they just run off and do some other thing, and then we wonder why we have all these behavioral health and mental health problems, right?
Yeah.
We're not in touch with ourselves.
People have a really hard time sitting with themselves. Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. There's a lot of demons in there. I mean,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Well, and in a way, maybe connecting back to solopreneurship a little bit,
Please.
you know, in a way, like when I think about where we started today, right? Waiting too long to do something.
Yes.
Okay, that takes me to, okay, so why are people afraid to start?
Right.
And it can be really scary venturing out on your own, right? Solopreneurship, at least to start, is a solo venture. Ideally,
Right.
you bring other people into the fold, but I think in most cases, people start as a team of one, right?
Right.
And that can be really scary for a number of reasons. And it's also not how a lot of us work for others, right? We typically, not always, work in teams or in large organizations. So it's maybe also just different from how we traditionally work.
Right.
Maybe there's financial risks. So that's a reason that it's scary to start out solo. But, when I think about, like, again, the problem I was trying to solve with my business was like, I didn't want to go outside alone. Let me tell you, my new favorite thing to do is to venture outside alone. I love being by myself. I apologize to all my friends who I also enjoy being outside with. But when you're by yourself, you get to choose whatever the heck you want to do. I love venturing outside solo, but it took me a long time to get kind of past those fears around solopreneurship, but also just like, I do a lot of like solo venturing. This trip across Canada is solo.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, you want
That's
to?
one of the things I wanted to talk about. So you just dropped this line in one of the meetings we were in the last month, that you're driving across Canada in a pop top. Is that what you said? So first of all,
Rooftop
what
tent.
the heck is a pop top? Okay, did I say it wrong?
Yeah,
Okay.
no. It's same. I think
Okay.
you're thinking about I think they still exist, but I'm going to call it a circa 1980s, like literally the pop top trailers, that
Yeah.
like popped
All right.
up and out. At least that's what my family had. It was like,
Okay.
it
Well,
was
I mean, I
like
just don't know
the
where to go.
working class RV.
Do you have a van that has a pop top, or is it a trailer, or is it a
No.
tent that pops? Yeah.
Yeah, I have an SUV. I have a small, actually small size SUV,
I love it.
that I've mounted a rooftop tent on top of.
Cool.
Yeah, essentially when I get to where I'm going or where I want to plant my feet where I want to be from for that night, I'll open the
Nice.
tent and be able to, yeah, camp on top of my vehicle and or in it. A
Cool.
lot of people will car camp, kind of in the back
Yeah.
of their cars if they've got room for
If it's
that.
big enough.
But
Yeah, yeah.
if it's big enough, exactly.
Yeah.
And I will say this, and I'd love to hear your reaction.
Okay.
This is very much based in this is going back to science. In my head, the science tells me that there is less risk being on top of my vehicle than camping on the ground. I don't know if science backs that because clearly something like a bear could climb a car. We've seen that on social media. But there's something that makes me feel, it might be irrational, but it makes me feel safer. And so I have mounted a tent on top of my car for this particular adventure because it's, I would say, one of the longest and more intense solo adventures I've been on.
That sounds great. My reaction is that sounds awesome. Yeah.
Amazing.
I think
Well,
that
that
would
says a
be
lot about you,
safer.
Dave.
Yeah. I thought of my time in Mexico where I was helping
Yeah.
building this church for these people, and we would just sleep on top of the building without anything, just under the
Yeah.
stars. That's the only time I've ever done that in my entire life, but
Yeah.
I remember it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something about that, sleeping out under the stars, and I don't know what it is. And I don't know
Yeah.
where to go from there.
I was going to say, like, your response says a lot about you. And I
Huh.
wonder if you've shared it just even with me today, some things that are new for me, but you've had a lot of like world experience. And I get the sense that
Hmm.
that makes you really open to the ways in which other people move through the world. Because let me tell you, 90% of people I've said that to, their first question to me is, aren't you afraid? When I say I'm about to embark on a 2 week
No.
solo
Yeah, no,
road trip
I'm
across
not.
Canada where I'm going to be by myself camping, aren't
Yeah.
you afraid?
That's what people always tell me in Thailand. Like, aren't you afraid sleeping outside?
Yeah,
And I say, oh
yeah,
no, this is how all Americans are. I would always
yeah.
play that card. And then I got to be whoever I wanted out there. Because, yeah, this is what Americans do. Yeah, we just live in tents all the time. But they always have like these very designated
Interesting.
areas with a fence and all
Yeah.
the tents touch each other. It's like, who would want to do that? Like,
Interesting.
right?
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
that was definitely just a random response. I wanted to go back to Josh because I think Josh,
Yeah.
he liked cedar. I don't think it was oak.
Okay, you've been thinking about this. You're
I've
right,
been
because we
thinking
talked
about
about it
that.
like a cedar chest.
A
Yeah, that
cedar
smells
chest, and
really
that came
visceral.
out. Does smell really good. And then we
Yeah.
talked about the moths. That's why I remember the
Mm.
cedar.
You were asking about this road trip across Canada,
Let's
and
talk more about that. We only talked about the tent. Yeah.
yeah, so
What's the plan?
the one thing that I want to share connected to this question of I just so appreciate your response. That sounds exciting
Thank you.
because I am
Well, and thank you
excited.
for the compliment. I kind of just like went into some other story. That does
No,
feel
it's
really good to
okay.
hear that. I really appreciate it. It was
Yeah, but
nice.
I do think it's based in what we know, right? Like all
Yeah.
of us are just moving through this world
Yeah.
and the lens that we have is our own lived experience. And I do understand why people and it like doesn't even have to be this trip that I'm taking later this month. I get that when I'm out camping by myself in Babbler, like aren't you
Yeah.
afraid? So this for me also goes back to why I started the business. I get the question. I understand where that comes from for people. And where I really want to challenge that is there is a piece of that I think women hear more than men, generally speaking. And so one of the things that I feel really
I think that's
passionate
fair.
about is empowering other women to either develop the skills to be outside by themselves if they want, or just to know that is okay to do, that we also have access to that. So
Mm.
with Evergreen Explorations in particular, one of our mantras is adventures for everybody, right? Every person, every human, right? Regardless of
Mhm.
gender, regardless of body type. When I was talking about starting the business because it was a need that I had that needed to be met, another big one for me was I truly, until very recently, was in so many outdoor spaces where I didn't see myself represented or didn't feel like I belonged. A part of what I'm doing, and I think what does make the business successful, is just helping more people to access that. So yeah, I get where like the question comes from, but I do think sometimes our way of thinking about especially nature and media doesn't help. Like the people that we see outside, it's like Bear Grylls, right? I mean, it's that sort of that stereotype, right, of
Yeah.
who belongs outside.
Hillbillies, duck
It's
hunters.
right. I
Yeah.
mean, right? Or
Yeah.
like, people, like
Yeah.
you said, disappearing into Canada, right?
Sounds good to me. Yeah. I mean, but that's me. Yeah. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And I think the same is true for entrepreneurship, at least like from
Sure.
my vantage point, right?
100%.
Who belongs in entrepreneurship? Like who gets to be a part of this experience of starting their own business and doing something for them? So I do
Yeah.
think for me too, like part of sharing my story is hopefully to inspire and empower more people to just do it. Do it late, do it in your 40s, but don't wait. You know what I mean?
There's a few things that have come up in my mind as you were talking about this. It reminded me of Clayton Christensen. He's one of the first business writers that I read. And he's categorized or critiqued as being a little bit too base or a little bit too simple. But he's kind of like a Stephen Covey character where he takes all these ideas and puts them into a giant ideology. But one of his main concepts is if you're a business and you want to succeed, you need to iterate, right? Think about Blockbuster. They were so great. And then Netflix came around and Netflix offered to partner with Blockbuster. And Blockbuster was like, no, we're good. We don't need internet. Internet TV, what the hell is that? And then look what happened, right? So I think starting the business when you're not ready is fine because you're not going to be able to keep the business model that you drafted out in pencil anyway, right?
Yeah.
I think for me, I wanted consistency of brand. I wanted a logo I'm going to stick with. So that was what was holding me back. But you can even iterate that. Look at the Coke logo, right? How many times has that changed? So iteration is the answer to me.
Definitely. I think especially in 2026, right? Especially today,
Okay.
where so much, I think for a lot of folks, and I'll say in L&D, but in general, a lot of folks building a brand is online, right? It like just starting a business looks so different than, 10, 20, 30 years ago.
True.
And it's unfortunately so easy to look at big brands and think, I am never going to get there, right? And I had a business coach recently say this to me, Sarah, every single person's Instagram account starts with one follower, everyone. Right. And so if like, for you, you've mentioned a couple of folks that are like mentors or maybe folks in the industry that you respect for what they're contributing to it, whoever that is, for you or for others as a current or aspiring solopreneur, let's say they've got a following of 1 million people, they started at one. I mean, and whether that's followers online, their client base, whatever that looks like, everyone actually starts from that same place. And that was a really helpful reminder for me because I do think that social media, the way businesses grow, the way that their brands are shared makes comparison natural. Like it's inevitable. We can't not compare ourselves, but one of my favorite mantras is comparison is the thief of joy. And I would add probably the killer of new businesses because we like fail before we start because we don't start, right? We let comparison get in the way. Like what you just said, not to challenge you, but like,
go for it.
Right? Like, you said, like, I felt like I needed a consistent, like, brand, logo, all of these things. And I'm not saying you don't need those things, but right, like, that's based on this sort of model of, like, what we say a business needs to start. And some of that may be true and may be based on, best practice. But I do think that comparison can get in our way of starting or even continuing. Too.
A sentence came to me as you were speaking before, and this to me sort of ties the fear of being outside alone with the solopreneurship. The ceiling of your experience is your fear, right? Our first natural enemy is fear. And if you're going to let the fear get the best of you, you're going to stay in the box. There's something to that for me, right? That it's the fear of, ooh, my logo's not right. Oops. Or, ooh, I picked the wrong color. Like, who really cares? You can change it anytime. Just get outside, right? Put your boots on.
You really can. You really can. I've recently actually pivoted on a couple of ideas.
Great. How so?
Just examples of how that works. I've shifted dates. I've got actually a retreat coming up in September. So it's a women's adventure wellness retreat. I'm hosting in Alaska in September.
Is this the event that you wanted to plug?
Yeah, I mean,
that was my next
question.
But
I'd be
please,
happy to.
Go. Please do. Yeah.
It's called Explore and Restore, and it is
Oh, cool.
again, like speaking of things that are self-serving, it really should be called like Sarah's Favorites Retreat because I have taken, like for me, what is like the penultimate Alaskan experience, like the places and the things I love to do in Alaska and created a retreat out of it for
Wow.
women
Uh-huh.
especially.
Yeah.
And there are still some spots available, but I shifted those dates back for a number
Mm.
of reasons. And so like that's just I think one example of, again of pivoting.
Yes.
So, I think going back to your question about like what are the things that you've done that have helped you to be successful? A couple of other things that for me came to mind. I kind of started with like you have to be passionate about your business first of all. And I
Mm-hmm.
would maybe call that alignment.
Sure.
It has to be aligned for you. It has to be aligned with who you are, what you're passionate about, maybe what you value. I actually kind of came to this in the process, like realignment. I think that's what we're talking
Mm.
about when we talked about like being
Sure.
willing to pivot, right? Or
Yeah.
shift or iterate, I think was the word you
Iterate.
used.
Yeah, I like iterate because I'm a designer. Yeah.
Yeah,
Same thing.
realignment.
Yeah.
Realignment, right? I
Realignment.
think
Yeah.
is maybe a success tool for solopreneurs. So not being afraid to realign because if
Mm.
if we know that we evolve as humans and who you are may be different in 5 years than you are today, then naturally your business is going to be too, potentially. And
Right.
actually the market may be different, right? The industry you're in might be
There you go.
different. So like that
Yes.
iteration or realignment to use my, like however you
Yeah.
want to call that, that's important too. And I would maybe add to that to be really mindful of burnout. I don't feel like enough solopreneurs are talking about burnout these days. Maybe they're burnt out on burnout.
Yeah. Maybe it's a buzzword that has lost meaning. What does it mean to
Yeah.
you? Or I don't. I just said that. I don't know. I didn't even think about that before I said it.
No. What is like that people are burned out on burnout? Or what do you
Well, yeah,
mean?
just because I think like what happens is like there's a really good idea that comes up in the world, and then everyone seems to be talking about it, and then it becomes kind of cliche or taboo, and then it loses meaning, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a huge danger there because some of the most
Mm,
important ideas become a cliche, and then people become
yeah.
sarcastic about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Burnout is a huge problem, right? And maybe we should be talking about it more. So,
Yeah.
what does it mean to you, or why did you bring that up, do you think?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting? I know I'm reflecting on your question, but I wonder if part of why people are turned off to it is that so many people have commodified it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
People have
yeah.
commodified it. So it is a real thing.
Say more about that.
People are writing about it.
Mm.
People are hosting workshops on it. People are consulting businesses, organizations on it. They've commodified it.
They're asking money for help with it.
Yeah. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying that that's a bad thing, but I do,
No, but
it's kind of like I love saying that I loved the Backstreet Boys before they were cool. Like I'm that person who was like,
okay.
I liked them until till they were cool and now I don't like them anymore because it's mainstream, right? There's, I
Yeah.
don't know, maybe something there about, I don't know, how we as humans think about something when it
Huh.
becomes too popularized
Yeah.
or too mainstream, right? We move on, or
Right.
maybe our brains get bored
Yeah.
with it. I don't know.
Exactly right.
But
Yeah.
you're right. It is real. It is problematic. It is something that a
Mm.
lot of people deal with and don't talk about. All of this is just based on my experience, but I think it's very easy to romanticize entrepreneurship or solopreneurship, right? Like how
Hmm.
romantic of an idea. I get to work for myself, right? I get to
Yeah.
choose, right, what I do. Right? Like there's
I
probably
get to
lots of
run the payroll. I get to process
right.
the
I'm
taxes. I
my
get to
own
worry
boss.
about having nobody. Yeah, it's glorified as like this really romantic, the American dream, if you will,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. And,
But
part of
and
my
I'm throwing all
business,
the wrenches into it, right?
but
And
also,
yes, and
yes, we, right, for most of us, we don't start out as entrepreneurs. We are
mm,
working in a job or working from someone else.
that was one of my
And then,
questions.
I
Yeah.
think,
There's that in
we
between
choose.
transition area. Right.
Right. And either we do that on top of something, which I'm actually doing. The
Mm,
way I talk about it is I've got a 9 to 5, which is my, full-time job. And then I've got a 5 to 9. It's my business. So a lot of people do that. Or, I think a lot of businesses are born out of, I was laid off or I needed to leave this job for one reason or another. And so I had to think
yeah.
creatively. But when that transition happens, however that happens, we move into business ownership, solopreneurship with these scripts, with these ways that we think about work, culture, business, all of those things, right? So
Yeah.
the grind, and it is culturally specific, right? So I'm thinking specifically about our United States context. That might look differently in other countries, right? But it's the grind. We're constantly connected. We,
Yeah.
um, we've got deliverables. The way we measure success is like what we're doing,
ROI.
ROI, all of those things. So whatever that is, however we've been socialized to think about business, right, and work, we bring that into solopreneurship. And so naturally, right, if that is the recipe for burnout in working for other people, that can become the recipe for burnout in solopreneurship. Except what else? The added layer is I really care about this thing and I am personally invested in it in lots of additional ways, financial and otherwise. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been talking about this recently, but I actually think solopreneurship could be a greater recipe for burnout, potentially,
Yeah.
because you've got all of these, again, scripts, ways that we've learned to think about work, some of which are problematic. And add on top of that, I've chosen to do this thing. I'm
Mm.
passionate about it. I am my own boss, right? I think it is a recipe for burnout. And I have a lot of folks in my personal circle who are burned out and we're not talking about it. So we're not
Yeah.
developing solutions to support solopreneurs, which is a lonely venture. It can be,
Yeah.
in finding that right balance.
And it's a good question. And I think you talked about it very well. It brought up something, and I have two things I want to say. First of all, I wish I liked Radiohead before they blew up. I didn't, but that would have been cool. I still liked them even though they had already blown up. But I do know something about them. And when they first started, they were still in college, and the band name was
Mm.
Only on Fridays because they only practiced on Fridays.
That's
So it's
funny.
that limit that made the band
Mm.
awesome. The fact that
Mm.
the container was the day of Friday made that band have that vibe, right? So to me, that's what it is. It's about setting those boundaries.
Mm.
I'm not going to spend 24 hours a day working on this podcast. That's not going to happen,
Yeah.
right? If
Yeah.
I feel compelled, the work wants to be done and it wants to be done by me, I'll wake up at 3 a.m. today like I did because I had to, because my body said I had to do it.
Mm.
Haven't done that ever before. But
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like when it fits, do
Yeah.
it. And when it doesn't, be okay to shut it down.
Can I ask you, have you always felt that way, or did you find yourself falling into some bad habits and you had to sort of think about, I'm actually not setting good boundaries for myself with this podcast, just as an example? I'm just
So
curious.
two-prong answer. So but the reason I hadn't started the podcast is because I was so passionate about building myself up on a blog called Improvement Dave. And then I turned that
Mhm.
into a vlog. And so then I was making video content and then it started to take over my life.
Yeah.
So I had to dial back that vlog. And so when I started the podcast, I had already done enough research that I knew I was like, okay, this is going to have limits. Otherwise, I'm going to get stagnated, burned out, and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. Can I do one
Yeah.
thing real quick? I just want to
Yeah.
look at that shirt.
I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I got
Nice.
my ATD shirt. I wore it on purpose because I've never done that on a show where I show my Superman
I
shirt.
did for a moment wonder where this was going, but I was like, I'm here for it. Sure.
What?
We will find a direction to take this in.
Game Layer also does strip poker. That's one of the side quests we have.
Oh, funny.
Sarah, this has been really fun. I'm running out of time. Where can
All
people
good.
find more about you, or how can they reach out to you if they like?
Yeah, I would say because you never know where I am in the world.
Sure.
Yeah,
Let's
find
go
me
online.
Find me online. Yeah, so you would love for anyone to follow Evergreen Explorations at Evergreen Exploration singular.
Nice.
Yeah, or I've got a website. Maybe we can drop that somewhere.
Oh, yes.
When you share this podcast. But yeah,
100%.
definitely online. I mentioned the retreat I'm hosting in Alaska in September. I've also got a number of virtual workshops coming up. One that I'm really excited about called Backcountry to Boardroom, using my experiences in the backcountry as tools for the workplace. So just to give kind of folks a taste of the sorts of things that I'm offering, whether that's something you just want to show up to, on your own, or you're in an L&D role, or maybe an employee wellness role, and you want to invite me in to facilitate something for your team. So yeah, I would love to stay connected with folks, and also just to encourage anyone to start. Right? Whether it's about solopreneurship or spending more time outside, start now. It's a Friday. Start as soon as you clock out, right? Whatever that looks like.
So one thing, Game Layer only drops on Fridays. That's
I
a
love
thing.
it.
At
I
8 in the
love
morning,
it.
because the 8 is the infinity symbol. So
Mhm.
So Sarah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you
Thank
so much
you.
for your time. ขอบคุณมากนะครับ คุณ Sarah นะครับ โชคดีนะครับ And I will
Thank
see
you,
you
Dave.
when you see me.
I love that. I will see you outside.
Perfect. See you there.
Take care. Bye now.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Game Layer. This is David Colmer reminding you to stay present and never postpone joy. You can find transcripts of the show at gamelayer.fm. GAMELAYER.fm. Theme music by Caleb Willits. Thanks for listening. Now go, play.
I play chess.
I play Scrabble.
I play faute. I play everything.
Hide and seek with my kids.
I play the piano.
I play board games.
I play guitar.
I smash it on the pitch.
I play chess.
I play Othello.
I play all the Marios.
I play Success Strategist.
I play Street Fighter.
Final Fantasy.
I play games of my own invention. Games of my own invention. Games of my own invention. Games of my own invention.
There are many ways to play. Going for a walk together, doing nothing together is also playing. Anything that can cultivate your feeling of joy, relaxation, where you feel more recharged after doing that thing, and I think you can consider as something that we play with. I'd like to move to the domain of play